Alright there, geezers, Jules here from FGS, home of the Future Games Show, and much like a person who owns a hot air balloon, a rocket, and a retro cherry picker, when it comes to video games, there are many, many ways to get high. For as long as the medium has been around, there's been pills to munch, potions to quaff, and you best believe actual crack to smoke, courtesy of Postal 2. And as the years have gone on, so many games have also sought to include drug trip sequences, where the player has to navigate a world now elevated thanks to illicit substances. And while a lot of these trips are fun jaunts from the norm, I'm here to act like the big light being switched on at the end of a house party and kill the vibe completely, because today we're going to look at drug trips in video games that became waking nightmares for the protagonist, the player, or both. But before we begin this, don't write me off as a narc just because I look like an undercover cop posing as a hipster meth dealer, as I have been known to push the limit from time to time, if you catch my drift, which for legal reasons I'm just going to state now as me taking one more paracetamol than the recommended dosage. I tell you, I couldn't sleep for days and I thought that my friend Tom was trying to stuff me into a washing machine. Those paracetamol will get you. So from one nightmare to the next, let's have a chat. As I'm Jules, this is FGS, and these are video game drug trips that became nightmare blunt rotations. And remember, this is the deep cut, so obviously obscure games only. No Skrillex-based Far Cry missions for you today, my friend. Oh, and by the way, you only have yourselves to thank for the title of this episode, as I actually put it to the people over on Blue Sky, and they said they would definitely watch this video. So prove me right. My boss, when I told him that this was the name for each one like this, he went, okay. Now I ask you, my friends, when I say the words Lord of the Rings, what's the first thing that pops to your mind? Is it that amazing clash at Helm's Deep? Nah. Is it Gandalf battling the Balrog? Nah. Is it the fact that foot fetish lovers get an action film series and one for the wank bank with these hairy hobbit feet in this trilogy? Nah, I'm good, thanks. No, what you clearly think of is just how bloody high all the wizards were throughout this series and the Hobbit prequel. I mean, they love a bit of the old pipeweed, and as Radagast shows in the Hobbit films, that ain't your regular pouch of baccy that's stuffed inside that pipe, my friend. In fact, given the high fantasy nature of Lord of the Rings itself, I'm surprised more people aren't tripping balls on the regular. I mean, hell, you'd at least expect that most of the populace would be on some form of opiates just to stave off the fear of all the magical beasts, enemies, and magic-wielding weirdos that populate their lands. Case in point, let's talk about one of these weirdo magic wielders, which is you when it comes to Lord of the Rings Online. And especially when it comes to a quest called An Unpleasant Meal, which you can find in the area of Evendim, because it's here where you can provide a group of giants one hell of a drug trip that they won't be forgetting anytime soon. Now the quest is handed to you by an elf that is just sick and bloody tired of these giants messing up their nearby forest, yet because they have the ability to, smash you into the ground like a fleshy tent peg, you kind of have to deal with them in a rather unique manner. This involves you sneaking up to a cook pot that they have in the centre of their camp and pouring in a mysterious drug that once consumed, well, takes immediate and rather devastating effect. Because trust me, this does not look like fun. Like, at all. The giants soon begin to hallucinate that millions of spiders are pouring from the nearby forest. And when you remember how absolutely horrifying Shelob and her kin look like in this world, it is no surprise that the giants panic and then start attacking each other before then fleeing from the woods, never to return again. Now, while the quest giver, and probably yourself, give a little laugh, because obviously it's quite amusing to watch these giants just flail about and panic like this, the lasting effects that it probably has on the group is going to be pretty bad. I mean, this is a bad trip, even worse than a family holiday to Butlins, and because of the fact they never return again, much like a family trip to Butlins, you can imagine that they are done in mentally. Oh, my family was actually kicked out of Butlins once. It's a long story. Anyway, let's move on and talk about a lesser-known sports game called Mutant Football League and the Strawberry Fields Dirty Trick. Now, when it comes to the world of sports, drugs and players wanting to get the edge on their opponents go hand in hand, or should that be needle in arse, because they juice up their hams with so much gear that their blood actually probably is quite fizzy. And there have been countless times where different sports have had their reputations ruined thanks to players giving steroids a wee old tickle. But you know what? When it comes to the world of Mutant Football League, a supremely obscure title from 2017, it's the other other teams that need to be wary, as in this game, well, you can straight up drug your opponents. You see, the game features a mechanic called Dirty Tricks, where in place of coming up with a plan of attack or defense, you can instead, well, just do some really nefarious things like bribe the ref, fart so badly that the opposing team avoids you, or just straight up pull out a shotgun and shoot somebody in the face. That one there definitely seems like a bit of a steep step up, right? Yet, if you're feeling particularly without morals, you can enact the Strawberry Fields play, which spikes the water cooler of the offensive team, and as soon as the play starts, well, the drugs kick in and it provides a horrendous time for whomever is controlling them. Now, while the prog music and hazy vibes might seem all rainbow rhythms, man, things get very four-nan, Jeremy, very quickly as you begin trying to move, as here you get a full minute's worth of play with all the controls reversed. Trying to complete a play here is a sure impossibility, as is just trying to run the length of the pitch, and in a real-time sports game where players can straight up kick you to death, running into them by accident over and over again is enough to make you lose your bloody marbles. Now, it is hilarious for the other player for sure to watch you stumble and beeline right into their boots, but for the drug team, well, this is utterly horrendous. Now, as a man from Devon originally, I'm actually quite accustomed to folklore and local legend. In fact, I actually grew up near Dartmoor, where one of my personal favourite ghost stories was the legend of the bowler hat. Legend has it that if you spy a bowler hat on the floor of the Dartmoor moors, you should never pick it up, because underneath there might be a head of a ghost who will pull you into the marshlands. I mean, what? What? I loved hearing this as a kid, right? But the weird thing is that I can never actually find evidence of this story or where it actually came from, so I legit think that my family might have made this one up to give me a fear of, what, hats? Don't pick up a stranger's hat? Anyway, the point being is that this type of upbringing also taught me about fairy rings and the danger they pose. Now, the story goes that if you go to a fairy ring at night, then the fairies themselves will party with you all night long. But if you refuse to dance or crack open a pixie brewski with them, they'll actually force you to dance until you die. And you can experience this death alongside many, many other weird ones thanks to the original Quest for Glory game. However, before you think that we're going to be covering this specific death of dancing to death in the game, you need to slow down those horses, mate, and maybe take a ket bump as well, because we're actually going to be focusing on mushrooms, the ones that grow in the fairy ring itself, and ones which the player can harvest and then sell to a local merchant. Well, that is unless they want to sample the mushrooms themselves, which can cause the player to experience one hell of a trip. Now, eating a mushroom causes the game to comment how things are all beautiful and neon, and you do actually get some weird special effects as well, but it warns you to never ingest them again. But seeing as we're players and we're playing a video game, and these types of game reward you for doing things that maybe the game doesn't, because maybe you'll get a secret. Obviously, you did that and sampled the mushroom buffet once more, and oh, what's that? We died? Oh, brilliant. Yeah, it turns out that eating the mushrooms twice means that the hallucinations we experience never actually end, and they turn our player character utterly insane before dying, and I quote here, a garish polka-dotted death. I believe I speak for all mushroom tea enthusiasts here when I say the following. Whoa, bummer. Okay, then let's move over and talk about one of my favourite games ever, Galerians, and the concept of shorting. Have you ever been so drunk that you've utterly p***ed yourself, or so utterly bamboozled off of discount maple syrup from Canada that's 30 years past its sell-by date that you've dropped a Mars bar on your pants or something? No? Right, well, count yourself lucky, because the main protagonist from Galerians, an underappreciated PS1 gem over here, well, they're always shorting their own pants thanks to their drug addiction, and honestly, it's getting a little bit concerning. I say this because the shorting mechanic in this PS1 survival horror / psychic nightmare kicks in when the player utilises the in-game drugs that boost your psychic powers. Now, the drugs come in a wonderful array of Skittles colours, and each allows our protagonist to access more and more powerful versions of their latent psychic abilities, but they do come with a cost. You see, this little bar here fills up, and if it does all the way to the top, then what was once a psychic power fantasy for the ages becomes something akin to, I don't know, accidentally walking into a TED talk on the power of powdered foot fungus medication, and now the doors are locked, and oh dear, the 30-minute slideshow has started of all the manky feet. Ugh, gross, get it away. And by that I mean that your health bar and your will to live overall will start to drain rapidly. Now, in a game all about resource management, the added need to stem the psychic bleeding caused by your overuse of drugs really is a stress inducer, but believe it or not, things are actually even worse for everyone else in the room when your main character shorts himself because, well, they die. They die thanks to their minds being shattered thanks to his psychic outburst. Cheers for that, mate. Really appreciate that. Imagine coming to after a big night out and finding the remains of your mates just pasted against the wall, and then the hangover to end all hangovers also starts to kick in, and oh god, the Greggs down the road isn't even open yet. Ugh, it's just making me sick thinking about it. No Greggs. Ugh. Right then, moving over to Grange Hill on the ZX Spectrum. Ooh, yeah. We're really pushing the limit right now. Actually, we're talking about pushers, so that actually worked well. That was a off-the-cuff tangent. I don't even know if Mark's going to use that, but he better. So, here's a quick history lesson on British TV culture and more specifically UK school-based drama show Grange Hill. I know, you've all been clamouring for it, so here I am finally responding. This show was like 90% after school special, whilst also being set at a school, and 10% holy is that Ant and Dec from Ant and Dec related things. It was cheesy, the writing was about as ham-fisted as a pig who became a boxer, and there was enough toothy grins to fill The Simpsons' Big Book of British Smiles volumes 2 to 14. Yet at the heart of it, this show sought to give younger kids an anchor point for the troubles they might be experiencing in their own lives, like trouble with learning or bullying, and of course we got the "Don't do drug, kids," drug singular in this case apparently, episode from time to time. Which was a theme that then carried over to the ZX Spectrum video game version of the show, except here, well, it was downright horrific. You see, in the game, you and your pals can choose to ditch school and go for a wander, yet instead of taking in all the beautiful sights of North London, you can instead abscond to a field full of trash and come across a shady guy wearing a trench coat and glasses. Now, the alarm bells should be ringing right away here because firstly, only flashers and dog kissers wear coats like that, and also this is the UK, so the idea of wearing sunglasses outside in our overcast nation, that is just a weird look, pal. Then, of course, there's the fact that he offers you some cocaine, and the game clearly states that this guy is a pusher. A pusher, apparently, with no concept of his core audience, because, I mean, come on, my drug-dealing friend, what are you doing over here? This is, like, who are you expecting to come to this remote field? At least go towards the town centre. Why am I trying to help this drug dealer? He's an absolute... And you know what? Buying the powder from him gets you a game over that details that your death was quite a horrible one indeed. He is dead, and you will be too. What a harrowing line from a kid's edutainment video game. And the worst part of it all is that you never even get to experience the drug first. It's just a freeze frame of text and then just a shattering of reality as you're booted back to the game's menu. Don't do drugs indeed. We won't let you do drugs. God, bloody Grange Hill. Anyway, let's talk about games that do let you do drugs, although maybe not so in the most sensitive way. As we talk about Narc 2005. Right, I won't lie to you, friends. Before researching this bone smoker of an episode, I didn't actually know that there was a sequel to the much beloved arcade game Narc. But it is true, it is damn Kurt Angle true. This series was resurrected in 2005 and it was, well, for lack of better words, utter tripe. But it did actually include some pretty interesting gameplay mechanics. Well, I say interesting. Interesting in the sense of if you're interested in seeing your characters getting hooked on drugs which could potentially lead them to a horrific downward spiral and a game over. Interesting, right? And I say this because in this 2005 reboot, the player could confiscate drugs from busted perps and instead of checking them into a contraband locker at the end of the mission, actively use them in battle to act as a form of power-up. Now, the grossness of using drugs as a power-up and all of the tonal whiplash of the game's drugs are bad messaging aside, these can actually alter gameplay dramatically, with the player able to freeze time, pick out bad guys with ease thanks to their heads being turned into actual devils, and even getting access to a slow-motion Max Payne bullet time if they smoke weed. You can also try Quaaludes and ecstasy and LSD. However, each time the player uses drugs in the field, there's a small chance of them becoming addicted, which lowers their stats across the board and also causes their badge rating to begin to plummet. And if this drops low enough, then undercover cops will attempt to arrest them, items will cost more from the black market, and, well, you might just get a game over, because if it drops way too low, it'll just be like, yeah. And you'll have to contend with some pretty weird hallucinations from time to time, like constant camera shake or really creepily somebody just whispering right in your ear. just like, get out of my ear. God damn, man. What do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are, mate? Take those whispers somewhere else. All in all, it's entirely not worth it because the effects are short-lived and the downsides so annoying to deal with, especially if your badge rating drops to its lowest values, because then the game might just straight up decide to, well, just give you a game over. And thanks to all of this, in a weird way, the 2005 version of Narc actually hits the brief of winners don't do drugs far better than the original title, because here, the annoying warping effects coupled with the broken badge system and the addiction effects are just way more punishing than, well, the nothing that was on offer in the original arcade game. Now, admittedly, in the original arcade game, you did fight a giant multi-chinned head of an evil drug lord, which does feel like the worst bad trip of all time, but still, here in 2005, things were decidedly more grim and punishing for those, well, absolute biff masters. That being said though, probably wasn't the smartest choice for the video game itself to be like, oh, drugs are bad, here's all the drugs and you can use them whenever you want, and they do give you bonuses and power-ups. Hey, look, I'm just talking back to the 2005 developers, like they would be able to do anything about it now. Just don't remaster this. And now we're going to close out the show by changing the tone a little bit and talking about Change, a homeless survival experience. And so we close today on a video game that deals not only with the effects of multiple drug and addictive substances, but also explores it through the lens of something that I, for one, can see as being one of the hardest situations that people could find themselves in, and that is being homeless. Now, Change, a homeless survival experience asks one question which leads to 1,000 different outcomes, and that is, what if you were made homeless? It's a game made by a series of developers who themselves faced this question and situation as well at points in their lives. And when sickened by the apathy and intolerance facing them and countless others, made this game to highlight the sheer cruelty that is faced by those living on the streets. Now, every choice that you make in this game is met with difficulty, from staying clean to finding food, treating injuries, and just trying to find any kindness in your fellow man. You have to fight for every inch, and in this city, which is as mean as it is, you'll often wake up each day further away from safety. Therefore, you have to face some really hard choices about how to actually survive, and this soon introduces the concepts of drugs and alcohol to use to numb the pain that you're experiencing. And while each of them give you a small boost to your happiness or let you tolerate the cold longer, the game highlights that these feelings will soon fade and be replaced with something much, much worse: withdrawal and addiction. And this then turns the gameplay into feeding those addictions through stealing and begging, and in just a few weeks can see your character unable to function without these items, which again pushes them further from stability and any chance of a better life. This is a gaming drug trip that is way too close to reality that it's genuinely uncomfortable to witness, as you see how easy it is to fall into these cycles and how difficult it is to escape. And you might come to think of Change, a homeless survival experience as an aggressively difficult video game experience to do well in, but that's just the point, as people like this are starting out with nothing and paying more every single day. I wish that I could end this episode on a lighter note, with something a little more jokey like some of the other entries here, but this is the truth, that every day hundreds of thousands of people wake up without a fixed residence and without any support from their governments or even their fellow man. And as a result, many self-medicate in order to cope with the harsh reality. Therefore, I've put a link down below to a charity here in the UK called Crisis, which helps people experiencing homelessness, as well as offering support and advice for those that are potentially going to be faced with this rather harrowing situation. And with winters being unbearable at times for those with the luxury of having homes to go to, donations are needed more than ever to help people stay warm and, for lack of better words, actually survive. If you do donate, then thank you so much from me personally and from the FGS team. But if you can't, then please, I'm not trying to guilt you here. Just take what you can from this game's core message and what Crisis and other charities like them are trying to do and help as best you can in your day-to-day. At the end of the day, I always preach that I'm just trying to get people to live a healthy and happy life. And that's what I want for everyone. And if you can make a change by donating, then fantastic. If you can't, but you still go out there with love in your heart to build bridges instead of burning them with your fellow man, that's also good too. And just know this, from all of the people here at the FGS team, we love you, we want you to do well, take care of yourself, all right? I'm gonna roll into the social media plug, but it feels a bit weird doing so after that. Follow me here, over on Blue Sky. Follow my lovely editor Mark over here as well. Just remember, take care of yourself. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back next week with another deep cut. Speak to you soon.